Al-Anon speaker. Please welcome Ginny N from Staten Island.
Hi, my name is Ginny, and I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. And I think I'll breathe now. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. I've been in Al-Anon since April 9th, 1974. And 31 years has been a very long time. And I like to go back. It's great to stand up here and talk about how great things are now and how great the program is. But we're here to share our experience, strength, and hope. And where I am today, believe me, I was not there 31 years ago. I tell you some of my background. I have a father who drank, who was not home, and at age 12, my father left. And the earliest memories I have living in that household was a lot of sadness, a lot of yelling, and of course, never saying anything. It just was a way of life. So my father left, and needless to say, we had a very hard life. No money, whatever. And my mother was on welfare, and from way, way, way before I met my husband, as a little girl, I always felt alone, scared all the time, and sad. And where that came from, I don't know. Part of my personality, circumstances that I was living in. I felt poor, poor in spirit, poor financially. And I took me, through my teenage years. And when I got to high school, I think I broke out of my shell. I started to, I'm a woman of the 60s, a lot of partying, a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, a lot of bad relationships. And, but thank God I could put the drink down and I could put the drug down. And I went through phases in the 60s of doing what everybody else was doing. But I wasn't, I didn't have to drink and I didn't have to do the drug. So I remember I was about 19 years old, and I was walking the streets in Brooklyn, and it was around Christmas time, and this overwhelming feeling came over me. I was so sad. I couldn't stop crying, and I started to get panic attacks. I started to get anxiety attacks. And I remember I ran to a hospital in Brooklyn, and I ran in, and they brought me to the psych unit, and they sat me down with a psychiatrist, and they wanted me to talk. They wanted to make sure I wasn't going to hurt myself, and they asked me what's the matter, and I said, I don't know. I don't know what's the matter. I just can't stop crying, and I just didn't want to live, and I was afraid of everything, and I ran away from that. They had set up an appointment, but I never went back. I was just going to, the next day get over it, and again, going through life, not knowing what was wrong with me, never feeling great. It's a lot of the stories I get to hear, too, from people in Al-Anon about how they felt about themselves and what their beliefs were about themselves. And I was in a lot of very, very bad relationships. Something about me, though, is very strange. This is also a trait that a lot of people in my program have shared with me. I was never really attracted to people who were attracted to me. I was always attracted to people who didn't want me. And, it was just like I felt that they were like jerks. I felt like they were, wimps. I don't know. I thought a real man, was, the more I cried, the more in love I was. And really, I really believed it's the how deep I cried and how I pined for this person, how I sat by the phone. Looking back now, I laugh about that, but it really was it was a horrible existence. And I thought that this occurred to me that I should get married because everybody was getting married. And when you were like 20 and 21 back then, it was like you're not married. And so I met this nice guy, and he really was a nice guy, and he didn't drink. And I always say it was like a fluke because I never really was attracted to people that treated me good. But he was available, so we got married. And as I walked up the aisle, tell you the truth, when you get that sickening feeling, I knew, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop going up that aisle. And after about 4 or 5 months, I looked over at him and I said, I don't love this guy. I don't want to be married anymore. And I packed up and I left him and I hurt him very, very deeply. And in the meantime, to back it up a little bit, my story is that while I was married to the first husband, I got a job and I was working in Bush Terminal in Brooklyn, and I was to meet my second husband, Tom. And me and him, it was my birthday, and we were at a bar, and I really didn't know him. I was a secretary typing, and he was, doing his thing in the company, and he kind of wrote me this, let me back up. We were in the bar, we were celebrating my birthday, and he's sitting at the bar, and this is really true. This is really true. I looked across the room, and our eyes just locked. And I thought, wow, he looks so lonely. He looks like he needs someone, and so I just kind of moseyed over to him. And we start this crazy thing going. And I'm still married to the first husband. 4 months, by the way. But there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not the alcoholic. I don't drink. But, you get the picture of where my life was going. But, of course, in my mind, it was always all my husband's fault. So we get together, and in the interim, my first husband decides that he's going to go after Tom with a gun. And it was really, I got in front of my first husband so he wouldn't shoot Tom. And it was a horrible, horrible scene. My family hated me. Everybody hated me. And I went off on my merry way, with my selfish and self-seeking, self-centered ways because, I was crying over Tom and my heart was breaking all the time. And this must be love. So I remember when I divorced my first husband and I went off with Tom. And I remember that one of our very first dates, and I don't even call it a date, but after work, he wanted to see me, and we had a bar up there on 4th Avenue in Brooklyn, and that's where we went. And I remember from the get-go, like I hear a lot of people now and on say, oh, I didn't know he drank. I didn't know he was that way. Well, I knew. But in my mind, I thought, I'm going to change him. I'm going to make this nice house, we're going to have a baby, and we're going to go off into the sunset. I had no clue about the disease of alcoholism and how big it was and how powerless I was. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And then we were sitting in the bar, and it's very funny. Right from the get-go, it was a problem for me. I would have my one drink or my second drink, and I would say to him, let's go. And he would say, after this one. And then I would be sitting there, and I would be getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And this wasn't like we were going together for a long time. I'm talking about the first time we went out. The first time. And I couldn't, like I always say, he was glued to the bar stool, and I was glued to him. I couldn't leave. I just couldn't leave. And I'd wait and wait and wait. And that's how it went. And that's how it always went. We always wound up in the bar. He always wanted to stay. I always wanted to leave. I wound up getting pregnant. And the martyr that I am, I remember telling Tom I was pregnant. And I said, oh, you don't have to marry me. The total martyr. And he said, oh, no, he's going to do the honorable thing. I mean, it was so sick. And, we got married, and, while I was, going to City Hall, we had he was going to stop for a minute, and where does he stop? At the liquor store. And we were going to go on this nice honeymoon to the Poconos, and we wound up in the Poconos, and when I get in the room with him, I had the sickening, sinking feeling at the second marriage. It wasn't even a sinking feeling. And we go in the room, and, I go in the bathroom, and there's a joint, and I take it, and I flush it down the toilet, and I have to tell you that the Poconos was never the same after me and Tom left. Because we just went ballistic, fighting, screaming. We're supposed to be on our honeymoon, breaking the room apart, and then getting up and going to breakfast like this, knowing that they must have heard our screams, our fights, a honeymoon resort. And the shame that I felt about that. And we got married, and I remember... I don't remember if it was while I was married or before I was married, but my husband said to me, these are some of the insane things that Al-Anon people do, that he needed to get license plates. And I said, okay, let's go. So then we went, and he double parked along somebody's car. And he was unscrewing the license plates, and I was watching out for the cops. And I'm like, this is my best thinking, right? But I don't drink, And another incident, is, and it's funny, but again, this disease is anything but funny. It wasn't funny then. We were going to work, and I tell this story all the time. And it's really, this story's about me. It's not about the drama. It's not about the alcoholic. It's about my behavior. And my behavior was, we're going to work in the morning. I worked in the World Trade Center. And we have a broken windshield. We have no insurance. We have probably stolen license plates. We're going through the tunnel, and they're waving at my husband to pull over. And he's not stopping for nothing and no one. And he said, screw this, I'm going. He's going through the tunnel. I'm screaming, let me out, hysterical. They're waiting on the other side with their guns drawn, telling us to get over. Not him, he's going. He went up Trinity Place. He pulled in a parking garage where you scoop in, and then the door comes down, and nobody knows where you are. We go up, I get out of the car, and I say, so what time are you picking me up from work tonight? I mean, it's like, hello, hello, this is my best thinking. And then I say to him, well, let's not take the tunnel, let's take the bridge, in case you're looking for us, I mean, and I was jumping out of cars, and, enough of that. I got to get into my recovery part. But I like to share those things because, I remember, the hardest thing for me in Al-Anon was to take responsibility for me and to stop justifying and rationalizing all of my behavior. So I decide I'm crying one day and I'm going out of my mind, and I'm only married 3 months. And I hear this commercial for Al-Anon, and there was a phone number, and I went to the phone, and I dialed Al-Anon. And I went to my very first meeting, April 9th, 1974, married 3 months, ready to die, didn't know what the hell hit me, and didn't care if I lived or died, but this was going to be my last-ditch effort. I had gone to the priest. I had, went to the hospital through the years, going to a psychiatrist to try to find out what is wrong with me. And I walked into Al-Anon. It was a Tuesday afternoon Brooklyn St. Jacoby meeting. And I remember I walked down the stairs, and I looked at the people, and all I could do was cry. And I said, I feel like I'm going to die. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I said, I just want to get a divorce. I just want to get away from this man. I'm losing my mind. And they said, just sit down and try to listen to everybody as it's going around. You need to listen and sit down. Because I thought you go there and they'd tell you how to get a divorce and what to do. And believe me, I was not ready for any divorce. But I was desperate. And there was nowhere to go. I said, well, I'm going out this place, and if this doesn't help, that's the end of it for me. It's over, it's done. And I thought, how did I get from where I was to here? What happened to me? I thought I was an outgoing person. I thought I always had a lot of friends. Even through those teenage crazy years, I felt like I was a popular person. Some people now and on say they were a loner, they were alone, and I always had a lot of people around me, but looking back, I really realized today how alone I really was. As they say, you can have a lot of people around you, but I was dying on the inside, and I just thought, well, this is the way you feel, this is how you go through life, and what are you going to do about it? You just go, you exist, there's no happiness, there's no joy, and then I got to Al-Anon. And I remember when I went to Al-Anon and they said to me, you need to get a sponsor and you need to make meetings and you need to get phone numbers. And you want to know, I did that. You need to help. I'd get there early. I'd stay late. I went every day. I went every night. I went 2 times a day. I didn't have a problem. And the reason, when I look back on that, the reason was I couldn't be alone. And I really never believed when I went to Al-Anon that I could get better. I just thought, well, there's nowhere for me to go. I might as well stay here. At least I have the people around me. And they said, if you keep coming, you're going to get better. They also told me that alcoholism was a disease and that I've been affected and that I have a disease. And I'll tell you very honestly, I didn't welcome that. I wasn't like, oh, thank you for sharing that I have a disease. I didn't want to hear that I had a disease. I was like, I'm the good one. I'm the wife. I cook and clean, yada, 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 on and on and on. And he's the bad one. He's not coming home. The dinners are going in the garbage. I'm running through the streets in my nightgown. I'm jumping out of cars, but there's nothing wrong with me. And the first thing that I learned in Al-Anon was that I didn't cause this disease. Because I really believed that if I was a better wife, if I was prettier, if I was, so many of those things, that I could, why couldn't I get him to change? How could he want to drink more than he could want me? I took it very personal. Oh, disease. I'd hear that and I'd get sick listening to it. Because I really believed he was doing it to me purposely. He was out to get me. And as I went to Al-Anon, I was so sick that, in AA they have those big signs, like one day at a time, live and let live, in red. And so my sponsor says, you know what, Ginny, I used to go to open AA meetings once a week because my sponsor said, you need to go. and you need to listen about the disease. And I'd go to open AA meetings like this and look at them and be mad and say, I hate them all. And I'd take the signs that they used to sell at AA meetings, and in my kitchen, I'd have these signs everywhere. All around the kitchen, on the refrigerator, in the bathroom. Live and let live, one day at a time. Easy does it. And he wasn't in the program. And he'd come home and he'd be drunk. He'd go, what is all this stuff? And I'd say to him, oh, I'm in this program. Oh, what do you do? Talk about me there all night? What do you do? Pray and hold hands? And it was so insane. And he'd come to the meetings drunk and wait for me to get out of the meeting, and the people would walk me to the car, and they'd say, don't answer him back. Just be quiet and go. And that was another thing. I couldn't detach because I always wanted to let him know how hurt I was. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I couldn't stop the pain from coming up. I just wanted someone to love me. I just wanted to be secure and loved. And I was trying to get that from somebody who had a disease. And I continued to go to Al-Anon, and he continued to drink. And in the interim, in those first 5 years of Al-Anon, I had 3 children. And to tell you the truth, I don't even remember how I took care of them. I think the bare minimum, it wasn't any physical abuse, but it was a lot of mental abuse by not being there. Just by bathing them, I wouldn't play with them because I was in my obsession. My obsession was, is he coming home? How's he going to come home? When is he coming home? I mean, all day, all night. Call him at the job. Are you sure you're not going to stop after work? This is the Al-Anon, the obsession of my mind. And after around the 5th year, he decides finally that he had a problem. Oh, well, yeah, I may have a drinking problem. And I was going to Al-Anon, when I was white-knuckling it, and I looked up at the steps on the wall, and I said, later for that. Maybe one day. Not now. I'm not doing the steps. I thought they were for other people, not me, and any mention of God would sicken me. Because God was the one that did this to me. I used to lay in the bed and say, God, why are you doing this to me? Why, and cry and cry and cry in the bed and blame God. And so when they would have meetings on the steps, I would sit there, and my sponsor, I would try to get out. My sponsor would say to me, you're staying, aren't you? And I'd say, yeah, all right, I'm not going to share. And then I would sit in the meetings and I would get sick. If it was on a topic, then I could stay. She said to me, I remember I went to her house one day and I said to her, you know something? I don't understand this God thing. And I want to know, how come you believe it and I don't believe it? And she says, because I have to believe it. And I do believe it. And I says, well, tell me how you got to that point. How did you get there? I'm sitting in these rooms. Now he's sober, and I'm worse than ever, by the way. He got sober, I got worse. And what happened to me was, I remember he was going to AA, and he was calling me up, how's your day, Ginny, going? I mean, remember how foreign this is to me. Gee, I'm going to go to a meeting. Is that okay tonight? And I'm like, I'm getting sicker and sicker. I call my sponsor. I'm hysterical. I'm in the worst depression ever. I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. He's going to AA. He's not drinking. He's nice to me. And I still want to die. And she says, you know what, Ginny? You need to take care of yourself. He doesn't need you to take care of him anymore. You have been avoiding you for the longest time. I could tell you everything about my husband, what color he liked, what he didn't like to eat, everything about Tom. But if you asked me something about myself, it was like, I don't know. And I remember going to a psychiatrist, and he says to me, I was in a bad depression. They gave me medication. And he says, I just want you to, name one thing you like about yourself. And I'm standing there, and I'm like, I was embarrassed because I couldn't come up with anything. And I'm like fishing. I said, oh, my eyes. He said, why your eyes? This is because everybody says I have big eyes. I couldn't connect anything. I was a non-entity. Everything was based around him, and nothing was about me. And as I went, continued on Al-Anon, what I started doing was I started sponsoring people. Now, I'm in a while, I'm helping the world. Like 5 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years in Al-Anon, and he's going to AA. We were 2 ships in the night. He was going to AA for years, 7 nights a week, and I was running to Al-Anon, and we were nowhere near being married a couple. We both went our own ways, sober, and me in Al-Anon, and I was in Al-Anon, and I remember thinking, I was sitting in the rooms thinking, I'm over here, I'm sponsoring people, I'm helping people, and I still don't even believe in God after all these years that I'm in Al-Anon. And I'm embarrassed because who am I going to tell that to when I've been in Al-Anon and everybody's looking to me because I have all this time? And who am I going to say? I'm still dying on the inside. I was white-knuckling it. I was going to Al-Anon and saying the words and saying, oh, I let go, I let God, and I was doing what I thought I needed to do so I would look good. And now I'm in Al-Anon 21 years. And all of a sudden now, in the interim, my husband had 10 years, went back out, got drunk, stayed out again for 7 years. And now we're coming to the end, I thought, of the marriage. And by the grace of God and intervention from God, my husband found another way of life. And he found the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he did the steps the way they are outlined in that book. And all of a sudden now, remember, I got the 21 years, and now he's saying, Ginny, wow, this stuff is great. He's like a new person. And I'm like, don't even talk to me about that. I got 21 years, you're the screw-up. You went back out to drink after 10 years, and now you're going to tell me about the program? I don't think so. And that was my attitude. Boy, you could tell how spiritually sick I was. And my attitude was I was still the injured party after all I put up with. That's what I said to myself. And now he was going to pay a price. I didn't really care if he did the steps, got drunk, went to jail. I really, I didn't know where I was going. And then 1 month went to 2 months to 3 months to 4 months. And all of a sudden, he started to, there was something about him. And every now and then he would say, Ginny, you really got to look at this. And I'd say to him, oh no, it's not conference-approved literature. I can't look at this stuff. Meanwhile, I'm working my own program, right? And then in the meantime, I sponsored quite a few people. And this girl came up to me that I was sponsoring for about 12 years. She says, Ginny, I think it's time that I do the 4th step. And I'm like, oh no, you're not ready for that. And you want to know something? The truth of the matter was, I didn't do it, and I didn't even know how to tell her how to do it. So that's the answer I came up with. You're not ready. And in the combination of that, and then my husband, I'm looking at him, and I'm waiting. If you're an Al-Anon person, believe me, you're waiting for the shoe to drop. Because I had the history with this man many, many years, in and out, in and out, in and out. I didn't trust anything he had to say. As a matter of fact, when he told me how wonderful the big book was, I said, don't even tell me about it. I don't want to hear about it. I heard it all. Just do whatever you got to do and stay away from me. 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, I'm looking at him. I'm like, wow, he's still nice. He's still considerate. maybe there is something to what he's doing. It's piquing my interest because God knows I'm dying in Al-Anon. I'm dying. I got 21 years, never did the steps, sponsoring people, filled with resentment, self-pity, martyrdom. And now, I got to choke and ask him about this book. I'm like, maybe I'll look at it, I said to him. Maybe I'll take a peek at it, And to speed it up a while, it led me to, it's be 10 years this year that I have gone through the steps as they are outlined in the big book. And I couldn't believe, what I discovered about the truth about me. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what, I would intellectualize the steps. I would be like, okay, I'm powerless. Just turn my will over. You know what? I didn't have God in my life. I didn't have a belief. I didn't have a conception. I had a conception of a scary, frightening, punishing, fire and brimstone. You're going to die for all the things you did, God. So why the heck am I going to turn my will and my life over to the care of God like that? So when I was brought through the steps, and, someone said to me, you know what? You got to die so you can live. I'm like, what do you mean? Death of self. Because the way you've been operating your life all these years, it hasn't done anything for you. And it was the truth. And the steps brought me to so much truth about me. And then in the second step, you're talking about here emotional sobriety. And sobriety means of sound mind. And being an Al-Anon, I was far from having a sound mind. I had an insane mind. And I was trying to make all decisions with that mind. About my life, about, things in my life, about my children, about everything with a sickened mind. And, and as I was brought through the steps and, came to believe a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And like my husband always says, there better be a God. There just better be a God. And then I was told, you know what? I had to quit playing God. I'm like, is that what I have been doing all these years? I've been playing God, directing and controlling, putting people in compartments, telling people how they should be, what was appropriate, what wasn't, and really never succeeding in anything I did, only through frustration. Taking the focus off me and putting it on others. So I wouldn't have to deal with what the heck was going on inside of me. And then I get, you can get your own conception. I go, wow, how come I never knew that? How come I couldn't even think that? No, because my belief system told me that I had to believe in the God that I was raised up with. I didn't know that I could change my belief system. I had no clue. Because when I started the work, they asked me to lay aside everything I think I know about everything. I said, that's great. I got 21 years in Al-Anon. How am I going to do that? But I did. For an open mind and new experience. And then guess what? I turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I now understood Him. And you know what I used to think that meant? This is what I used to do. Okay, God, you take it here. 5 minutes later, it's back. I didn't realize that meant that I do step 4. I had no clue. That's what you do. I waited after step 3 when I used to say it. I'd sit and wait for something to happen, and I go to the meeting and say, you know what? I gave it over to God. I must be defective because it's not working. I get it back again. And I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't understand that in order for me to get better, I had to get rid of my selfishness, my self-centeredness. I had to die in order to live. No clue. And then, I went on my journey in 4. And here I am. I had no problem. Here I am in Al-Anon for 21 years, and I got 75 people on my list. 75 people. I'm like, oh, wow. I didn't realize that. Because I'd say, oh, I let that go. Oh, I'm not mad. I do all these things, and I really believed it. I didn't know that resentment was killing me. I didn't know that the fear was paralyzing me. And then I went on my journey. And you know what? When I saw my truth, I felt like, for the first time in my life, a freedom. When like, okay, and it wasn't even in a harsh criticism. It was there. I wrote it. I put it down in black and white, and I saw it. And I asked God to reveal to me. To remove the blocks that have been blocking me for my whole life from the truth about me. And then I went on, and 5 was like, some people say, oh no, I was ready. Let's go. I'm ready for 5, and I dreaded 5 because I was still attached to what are people going to think about me. And the trust. And I had to go deeper into prayer. And I had to reveal to someone everything about me. One person had to know every single thing about my whole entire life. And then the question was asked, is there anything that you didn't tell me that you need to tell me? And believe me, there was. And I didn't want to say it, but I did. And then I went on, to 6 and 7, and I did my cling list, and I did my objectionable list in 6, and then the 7-step prayer, and making my list, my 8-step list, and I just couldn't believe, like if you're an Al-Anon, if you're an Al-Anon of my type, the last thing you ever want to do is apologize to an alcoholic. That's the last thing you want to do. For my behavior, and I was like, I didn't go through the steps, sailing and breezing through. I felt some resistance, but it was really the truth of what they said about the prayers, how important it was to keep saying the prayers, and that's what carried me through, because power, lack of power, that was my dilemma. And I had to get the power from God, and keep the contact, because, I really wanted to be rid of self. I wanted to begin anew. And then I make my list, I get to the 9th step, and, I go and I clear away the wreckage of my past. And, and I went to my husband, and if anybody would have ever said that I would be sitting across from my husband, telling him the harms that I have done to him, I would have told him there's no way in hell. Left to my own devices, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay dug in, to my justification and my rationalization of what my father did, what he did, and what everybody in my life did to me. And moving through, it's funny because I'm in the 9th step again, and for me, I do the steps every year. I try to keep myself current. I'm not the one type deal, you go through them and you live in 10, 11, and 12. And I do, 10, 11, and 12, and I'm not perfect, believe me. I'd like to stand up here and say that I'm on my knees every day, And I know that I do pay a price when I don't, And I always, thought that prayer, and I was always ashamed of prayer. I was always ashamed to say that I believed in God, because I felt like those people, they were weak. They were weaklings, You got to be tough. You've got to do the things. And what do you mean God? Everything depended on me, And it was the shift, they say a shift happens where you're no longer dependent, on anyone but God, And about a year ago, again, saw through prayer and meditation, and 10, continue, and I still write. I don't write every night, but I do. I don't want anything to pile up again, because I never want to have this again, and I don't think, anybody I talk to that have worked the steps does it perfectly, but I know in 11, when I went to a nice meditation last Sunday, and meditation's been hard for me, I sometimes I get these pictures in my mind what I should be looking like, doing the meditation, and I realize today that for me, it's whatever it is, it is. It's not what you have. It's not how you do it. It's that I'm just even willing to do it. Today, even to say that, I used to go to God last, and now I go to Him first, 12, carry the message. Having had a spiritual awakening, I was carrying the message. I had no spiritual awakening for years, but I really was doing the best I could with what I have. Keeping it to myself, not telling anyone after all those years of Al-Anon, I don't get this. And in 12, carrying a message today of faith, of hope, reaching out to the family members who have been affected by this disease and tell them, you know what, you keep coming. Your life is going to get better, because you heard my story. And there was no way, a lot of people had the belief in me when I didn't have the belief in me. They loved me when I couldn't love myself, And last year, actually 14 months ago, me and my husband were faced with a devastation. And we have a son who's 26 years old who went blind. And, thank God, something great has happened too recently, but he's a diabetic, and he started to lose his eyesight, and me and my husband, I thought I was going to just plunge into the depths of despair, and me and my husband, we clung to one another, and I think that the pain that we experience as parents of watching your child, lose their eyesight is, and I don't say this for the drama. I guess what I'm trying to get to is that it was God that brought us through this. Because when that first happened to our son, I don't know about my husband, I won't speak for him, but there was just a second of me that said, wouldn't it be nice to just take myself out? When the pain gets that great? And I know today, when I look back and I see how God was there, like He's always been there for me. He has helped me, He has helped my family. I love Al-Anon. I love what it's given me. I love the gifts of this program. My son got some of his sight restored 2 weeks ago, and not a lot, but he can, watch a TV, and he can do little things, And you know what? This is the first time, wasn't it funny when that happened, that I didn't say, God, why are you doing this to me? I had to believe that God is everything or He's nothing. God just can't be something when I'm getting everything I want. I had to know that no matter what the outcome was, that I was going to be okay. And that I needed to trust God. I needed to trust Him with every single thing. I was wondering how I was going to talk for an hour. And oh wow, I still have time. It's been great. I still get nervous. I was telling my good friend Janice, and some friends of mine from Staten Island who came with me, May and Frank, that, thank God, come with me and give me support, And two of them I sponsor, and here we talk about sponsorship and sponsees, And I go to my sponsees sometimes, and I let them know today the truth. I don't give this image that I have all the answers and that I know everything. And I let them know sometimes when I'm afraid or when I'm scared, And I don't have a problem with that today. It's not an ego trip. I always had to have all the answers, even in Al-Anon, for everybody, I'd like to say again, thank you so much for listening, and I'm so grateful, and I love you guys. Thanks a lot.
Everyone's always confused about our tradition they don't know about. This is a card from our group to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
15-minute break.